Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Zenitsu, and you're listening to the Digi Talks podcast, the show that covers various topics from news to meta developments and everything in between for the fine folks who love the Digimon trading card game. Just as a quick reminder, I do stream this live over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, and it also gets uploaded as a YouTube video under the YouTube channel of Zenitsu, while being up on various different podcasting platforms like Spotify for your viewing and listening pleasure. Today, I'm back with my co-host, Teddy, and we're going to be talking about the idea on how to grow an LGS community and how you could better support that community to be as successful as it can be, given the context of the community that you're going to be working within. But first, let's have Teddy with this week's question.
So the question of the week will be, what is it that you guys look for in an LGS to support whatever game it is you are playing in? So this can branch out to whatever game it is you are playing in. In our case, we of course are looking at Digimon because that's what this channel predominantly focuses on. But the question can be pointed in all directions.
Which I think that's a very relevant question because a store is largely a big part of, how a community is even formed to begin with, because without the store, there really isn't much of any kind of a local play. Sure, you could go to Denny's or whatever and borrow a table every week, but I know that's not...
If that table is good, as long as you're having fun, it doesn't matter where you play.
Yeah, I know some people, everyone's situation is different, but for those who have a store nearby or close enough in proximity, that's definitely a very valid thing because, we'll get into, one of my answers is the convenience of it. The main reason why I go to my main LGS is because of the convenience factor. It is only 10 minutes away, but I know, if that store didn't exist, I would have to re-examine and reevaluate my entire situation just because everywhere else is a half hour out. And then I would have to, actually pick and choose which half-hour drive and what direction do I want to go and what store would work better for me and what I want out of the game as a player that store can provide.
See, that's where I'm at the moment. All my local stores, well, local quotation marks, they're about 20-30 minute drives. So when I go to these stores, I'm very much looking for specific things, especially when I'm, at least in regards to support in the games that I play. For example, Digimon. One of my locals, very awful. They don't really support us that well. They get product a lot of the times it's late. And even though this store is closer to me in vicinity, I still take the extra 10 minutes to go to this other store because they actually treat us fairly well. They adequately compensate us for the pricing and what we pay to play. And they respect our time. And that's something that's very important to me.
Which that definitely is valid. And we'll get into more about LGS stuff after more in depth after we get the meta development out of the way, so we could get more in depth into that, because we actually did have another online regional, and this time it was Latin American's online regional. I believe the promo cards were legal for this one. It's just none of the decks that actually topped actually used any of them, so it's not like that mattered.
Not relevant.
It could for certain... Actually, I lied. It was relevant for a total of one deck, which that one deck we'll get into later. So this was a pretty decent event for Latin America. It was 107 players, 7 rounds of Swiss, and the top 16 breakdown is first place went to Shine Greymon, second place went to Lugamon, third place went to Shine, fourth place went to Lugamon, fifth place went to Lugamon, sixth place went to Beelzemon, seventh place to Security Control, eighth, another Shine Greymon, ninth, Red Hybrids, 10th, Shine Greymon, 11th, Machine Dramon, 12th, Security Control, 13th, Beelzemon, 14th, Examon, 15th Hunters, and 16th Shine Greymon. So as far as the archetype breakdowns, there was 5 Shine Greymons, 3 Lugamons, 2 BLs, 2 Security Control, 1 Red Hybrid, 1 Machine, 1 Examon, and 1 Hunters. So no shocker there that Shine and Lugamon are probably the 2 best decks in the format. I think, like, I've been on record saying this before, it feels like everything is just trying to catch up to the power level of Shine, and Lugamon is the deck that seems like it's in the best position to do that. It doesn't seem like anything's, like, over exceeding that power threshold, and I like so far the decent spread. I believe right now between both of the large online events, there's like 17 different decks that have been able to top, which is pretty solid, and Shine and Lugamon aren't like in dramatically that high of a number compared to the other decks as of right now. Granted, it's still super early, but the fact that Lugamon's eating out of the Shine pie is making it so those 2 decks are more in competition, which lets other decks actually be viable, like Examon. So Examon is a deck that we haven't seen in a while, and I feel like he's more of a meta-specific deck to how specific playstyles, like, the meta shifts in between and towards. So the fact that Examon, what place did Examon? Examon got 14th place, went X and 2. That's still pretty good for what Examon is. And it's not like this is the first and only time we've seen the deck. There was a PPG event. It was obviously a very small event, but Examon was in top 8 for that event as well. So maybe there's actually something to Examon in him actually performing as well as he is. So going over the big changes to Examon, what's something that kind of stands out to you, Teddy?
I mean, there's a big glaring ace Digimon, which I think is super cool. I like that they used the Imperial Dramon Dragon Mode ace. It just makes sense the more I think about it. Being able to slam your level 4s and just constantly keep going up the chain. I like that a lot. And then honestly, the rest of it looks fairly similar. I do like that. I would have maybe gone up on like the Syakomons more than the Madokis, but maybe it worked out. I mean, clearly it worked out for this person. But I like it. It just looks like a very competent Examon list. Very similar to the one I run right now, actually. Just I don't have the ace in there currently.
Yeah, so for the Latin American event, the rookie lineup was pretty standardized. It was 4 of the BT11 Dracomon, and then 4 of the EX3 Dracomon, and then you have 2 rookie slots that you kind of can play around with. The PPG was just running some of the digging Dracomon that's just looking for Dramons.
Yeah,
And
the starter deck one.
yeah, and the Latin American one, they were just running floodgates because, why not?
Makes sense. They got the space.
Yeah, and they were also just running a full Quadramon lineup between the EX3, both red and green, or not red and green, blue and green, and then they were running 4 of the starter deck 8 with the security ability to draw 2 cards, which that probably actually matters a lot because it lets you easily go, like, if they're unable to deal with that extra body, you could just easily go up into a level 5 and then, like, start setting up from there. If they're trying to aggress pretty early on, that could lead to a very easy hard punish.
I mean, yeah, you do that.
The
Oh, go ahead,
PPG deck isn't running as many of the Quartramons. The PPG deck is definitely heavier on the options, though. I will say that. But the rest of the list is pretty much standardized. It's just your 4 Wing Dramon, 4 Ground Dramon from EX. Like, most of the cards are just going to be from EX3. Then you have your Slayers and your Break Dramons. The PPG list wasn't running any Break Dramon, and they were just running the Dragon mode. The Imperial Dragon Mode Ace. I actually like just having Break Dramon still, just because against security control, burning the opponent's security is like insanely important. Then you have your 4 EX3 Examon, the PPG lists, they were running at Death X. Both lists were actually running at Death X. So the spicy tech splashing for Death X is just a thing. And then the rest is kind of just whatever. They're running the Davis Tamer, and then just whatever removal they feel like between either Megadeth or Heaven's Judgment from EX4. And then you just
So
run whatever other cards you just feel like you want to run.
what's funny about this is that this person is one of my boys, and me and him were testing a few weeks before, like with this deck, and I didn't even really think about it. That's really cool.
The PPG
There,
guy or the
PPG, yeah,
okay,
the
yeah.
PPG.
I mean,
That's cool.
like I think for where the current shape of the meta is, just the concept on how the design change in the game for what the training cards are doing allows Examon to actually be playable. It's not the fact that he's using them, which he's not, which is not to anyone's surprise because he's going to run into consistency issues because
Correct.
he's a lot of his cards aren't true dual color. They're just either green or blue, so it's harder
Yeah.
to use the training cards. But the fact that the idea of you could just build your Examon while the opponent just sets up all of their training cards to try to make an explosive big turn. And Examon just hard punishes that because of the Slayer Dramon's goading type of ability. It forces the Digimon to attack. So in a lot of scenarios, they'll be like, okay, I'll move my rookie out, training boost into a level 4, Digivolve into level 5, Digivolve into level 6, maintain turn because tempo is like borderline too good at this point, and then just rock you with my level 6, and I created a level 6 in a single turn. That was able to respond and deal with your threat. Examon basically turns that type of a concept on its head, and is just like, okay, you raise out your level 3, and then I goad it to die. So if you don't have another Digimon set up, you just straight up can lose the game just to Examon sitting there. And I think that's kind of hilarious. The fact that we're so hyper focused on that one stack that sometimes like the
Hey,
decks get too tunnel visioned and can just lose to something like this.
yeah, something very simplistic in nature too. Like it really isn't like all that groundbreaking, but it's so the idea is so simplistic in nature that a lot of people just don't even think about it. That oh, I just promote, and then it's like, go ahead, you can promote, and then you just lose because you promoted. You'd set up all that time setting up all those options, your trainings, your mem boosts, also that you promote, you have your perfect hand stack, whatever, just to get punished from one card.
Yeah,
I
and
like that, and he's also doing the Takumis as well. At least the one on the PPG. I like the text and stuff like that from his list.
yeah, I mean, like the fact that you have some space for flexibility between what options you want to run definitely adds more of a surprise factor where, okay, you see Examon, you know his general lines of play, but what else are you going to be expecting out of him is going to be like the big deciding factor on if an Examon deck can perform as well as it can. Just because the two lists between PPG and the Latin American, their option slots are like actually completely different. They're running completely different options, doing different things. But the core idea to just lock the opponent out of the game because of Slayer Dramon's goading ability, that's like the real prize to what makes Examon good in this format. The reason why he wasn't good in other formats was because, like, in BT 12 and BT 11, we were just mostly in a tamer format. So we were playing our tamers, setting up our tamers, and then our Digimon don't even come out of our raising area. They just come out of nowhere. And
Correct.
that type of a style made Examon way worse because he was trying to punish the raising area indirectly.
Exactly, and it was just there was also a lot of ways that like you could flood the board or make it so that you could. There's a lot of ruling problems with Examon that like you can get away with shenanigans. Like having Digimon that just can't attack. You can use them as the target, and then that's it. Basically, Examon can't do anything to you, or the Slayer Dramon effect can't bother you. There's a lot of ways to play around it, but I think now that we've veered away from those methods, that it's a lot harder to play around this because everyone's so hyper focused on just get that one turn, kill that one turn, it swing the game in my favor in that one turn.
Yeah,
That
I still especially like the tech of Dragon Mode, the Ace
I
promo
love
Dragon
it.
Mode, just because it's a level 6 that hard plays for 7. So on your level 5s, you already have end of turn DNA. So, and they can count as technically level 6s as well. So it makes it even
Correct.
easier to get into an Examon. And the fact that Examon can rake his inheritables means you don't always have to digivolve into Slayer Dramon, which is probably what the PPG player was doing more often than not, was let me get into my level 5s, hard slam this Imperial Ace, throw Slayer underneath, now I can goad the opponent's Digimon and they could just eat dog food for the rest of the match.
I like it because you also get like the on play effects and stuff like that. So
Oh, the on
it's
play effect
so
is
good.
disgusting. Yes, it's
It's
so.
so good in this deck. The more I'm looking at it,
Well, also,
like
if you don't even use the level 5s to just digivolve right away, they could still sit on the field and then threaten the ace. So, like,
exactly,
you just don't know what to expect out of just the addition of Imperial Ace. And because he's both colors, blue and green, and he's a Dramon, like, it just makes perfect
searchable,
sense. Yes.
searchable in the deck, basically usable through all the effects, excluding no, I think it's because this
Yeah,
is, well,
more
this
often
Digimon
than
has
not.
Drummond. Actually, yeah, literally, he gets all the effects
Yeah, so most
because
likely you're not
evade,
going to be able to use the
blocker.
ability to play Digimon unless it's like another rookie. But just setting up your tamer for future plays is still probably insanely important, especially since you could use that tamer to now have enough tempo to try to line up a backup in case the main goes away.
I
It's
mean, it helps with the Dracomon searches and things like that. I like it. It
I
makes
mean, yeah,
sense.
you still have lots of good level 3s that you could play off of it. You're not
But
playing any level
getting those
4s.
Davis though, oof,
Yeah, getting the Davis just because blue
crazy.
and green kind of had a problem with setting up their tamers for a very long time, and this card just lets you do it basically for free is really nice.
Exactly. You could do it for free while simultaneously setting up a level 7 that then sets up a level 6. Like, actually crazy.
Yeah. And then shifting to some of the other off decks from Latin America, we got in ninth place Red Hybrids. Pretty much is the list is looks exactly as what you would expect out of Red Hybrid list. The majority of the cards in the Tekken package is still intact. They spiced the deck by adding 2 training cards in, just because there's still good cards at finding tamers, which is insanely important for the deck. And then it offers different lines of play where you could use it from your level 3 to your level 4, or you could use it from your level 5 to your level 6. So there's still Digivolutions that it can target and work with. So it's not like it's that bad in terms of like the tempo that it's going to be providing. And then the other big shift of the deck is they're using the Koromon BT14 egg, which I think is just easier and better card draw, especially if you're trying to be more aggressive with red hybrids anyway, where it just, oh, I dealt damage to the opponent, cool, draw a card. It's basically the same thing with Takuya from BT12, where it's just like, oh, I dealt damage, cool, gain 2 memory. Like, it's
I think it's just infinitely superior in this deck. It makes 100% more sense.
yeah, outside of that, the rest of the deck basically looks exactly as what we've seen it a million times before. They're still running Gravity Crush, Atomic Inferno, Omnimon, both of the Emperors, more so on BT13. And then, like, yeah, it's just a very standard cookie cutter list, just with some minor tech to be able to help accelerate the deck, and I like it a lot.
I
Uh,
do. I think it's a very nice, it's a very concise list. I like it.
Yeah. The more spicy list, though, I think this is definitely one of the spiciest outside of just seeing Examon in general, is probably the Machine Dramon list. Because this Machine Dramon player had a very interesting, like, going back to old ideas that were still somewhat successful by playing the jamming Vmon and the jamming egg to be able to just aggress really early, draw some cards, have access to blue options like Kaiser Nail, and then they're just hard playing the EX1 Machine Dramon and just basically trying to steamroll the game from there. Just draw as much as you can, Machine Dramon, and then kind of just, go off. They're running Analog Youth and the Taikimiya for some extra card draw and some searching. So I like that. And then it's just a slew of different level 5s. Like there's a lot of different ones. It seems like the majority of the abilities that they're trying to go for is like Security Attack Plus, Blocker, Reboot, Delete something, and then a little bit of DP gain and burning of the opponent's security. But that's pretty much the extent of the options that they're playing with. And then they also run Ragnarlordmon, just because it's a good level 7 with giant stacks that can just close out games out of nowhere.
Yeah, Kaiser Nail into Ragna is bonkers. Like, actually crazy. So
Yeah.
it just makes sense. I mean, I like this. I
Yeah,
like that they're using Cyber Dramon. That's a very to me. I love this card. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. I love it in this deck.
that's the D-Digivolve, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they have
D-Digivolve
two
is just
tankers.
really important. But yeah, like you said, the main combo seems like you're going to want to Kaiser Nail the Machine Dramon, create that second stack, really big, really nice, gain memory for using Kaiser Nail, because I think it's a net 1 memory, because Machine
Correct.
Dramon's going to
Put
give you
five
5, and Kaiser Nail costs 4. And then you just have 2 level 6s and then Ragnarlord. Like, it
auto win.
looks, yeah, it just makes sense. It looks very fun, and it's very interesting, especially since we were trying more of a stack based approach. And maybe that's correct, maybe that's incorrect, I don't know. They had success, so that's something.
There's merits in both, so it makes sense.
Yeah. And then the other off, I'm just going to label them as off decks, just because they're not like what the meta is really focused on. Between Beelzemon and Security Control, they really aren't like that different of decks compared to what we've seen before. And like, I mean, obviously they're doing success, so there's still some merit to them. And
Yes.
I like just the widespread approach that a lot of these decks have. So, like with the Beelzemon decks, you have one that's running the Wisdom to try to have cleaner evolutions. They're also splashing in Shine Greymon Ruin mode, where the other one is teching in the promo Security Imp and
Yep.
Beelstar. And I like both of them. Like, I like both of the lists. Personally, I like the evolutionary path a tiny bit more, but if you're not going that, it makes sense to spice it up with the tech one of BL Star, just to have alternative ways to gain rush and try to close games out differently.
See, for me, I like the Baelstar and the promo Hitmon one a little bit more, but that's just me. I also think it's personal preference. They do vastly different things, but I like the creativity. I like that there's not just like, well, we're just all gonna use the same exact list, maybe change, like one card and then be like, yeah, this is my list. I like that they're experimenting, people are doing things, and it actually is able to work perfectly fine.
Yeah, especially in this meta where Lugamon and Shine are the two boogeymans.
It's a destined pair of. It's refreshing to see.
Because I see a lot of people still like asking the question, "Oh, is Beelzemon like actually still viable?" The answer is yes.
It does. It didn't. It's not. It was never bad. Even after the hits, it was never. I don't understand where that line of thinking came from, because the deck didn't lose that much. Like,
No, I just think the attention is on other things, and we've
yeah,
seen other decks in BT13 like do insanely successful for having very low representation. Like, I think the number 10th best deck in BT13 was Alphamon. Like, let that sink in. Alphamon. Like, granted, he did get updates that were really good for the deck in BT13, but like, you wouldn't think that Alphamon would be the number 10 best deck out of BT13. And Allforce was not far behind him either. Allforce had even less updates, and that deck was still insanely successful. So, like, I think because of the not necessarily lack in power shift, but because everything feels like it's trying to catch up to Shine, I think anything that was kind of good in BT13 is still also perfectly viable here, if not more, because the training cards for the stack-based decks give them the consistency boost and potentially tempo boost that they needed to compete with the tamer-based decks.
Yeah, I agree. I agree very wholeheartedly.
And then we had Security Control as like the last outlier stylish deck. Basically, it's just Shadow Serafi. It's just like, cool, let's just use both the Magna Angemons and then Shadow Serafi and Death X, and the rest is just going to be like Karis to gain memory for punishing the opponent for attacking, then your usual Chaos Degrade Flame Hell Scythe, just to revive Magna, just to keep yourself alive. The new Magna is 8k, so we do have to keep that in mind. But he costs 4, so he's a lot easier to use, and he potentially kills stuff.
I was like, yeah, it's a 4 cost that also nukes something's technically at best 6k,
Yeah,
at
I saw
worst
some Royal
1k.
Knights decks start splashing Magna Anja Ace in, and I've been liking that a lot. And then you got Hairspawn as a security rookie to try to keep yourself alive a little bit better. Like, it is just doing exactly what it says. I'm just going to sit there, I'm going to recover, I'm going to be as disruptive as I possibly can, and it's going to be annoying, and my opponent's going to lose because they don't know how to play the deck, or to play against security control. Because I do think the deck is still trying to force errors out of the opponent. It is a deck designed not to win, but it's a deck designed not to lose. So that's the big takeaway, and it's easier to win when you're not losing against players who just don't know what to do.
Correct. Just punishes the people that are either impatient or don't want to play a certain way.
Yeah. So it is annoying of a deck, I will say that. And
It is
it
what
did
it
get a
is.
little bit better, but it is not undefeatable.
No, not even, especially now with all these decks that go dramatically wide. I think it's fine. Like, it's tedious to play against, but these decks that go wide still eat it alive.
Yeah, and some of the other decks that topped in PPG was Bloomlord, War Greymon instead of Black War Greymon. So now, like, War Greymon's trying to adopt more of a big punch factor, which is slightly separating itself from the hard control factor that Black War Greymon was doing, especially now that we care more about speed. I think, like, War Greymon has the potential to be able to outspeed its control variant, where before it just kind of didn't. And I think, like, all of the additional punches that it can do and the amount of new tools it has because of the warp from the Agumon just gives it more viability as a more standalone deck. Even though the majority of it is still playing exactly the same as Black War in terms of, like, the low end cards. It's just top end is trying to diversify itself more. And then we also had a blue flare. So, like I said, anything that was good in BT13 seems like it's still going to be good in this format as well, since the power ceiling has not been raised.
Just noticing that war grade deck, this guy's using Louis.
Yeah, it's the turbo raising area.
Interesting. I
So,
don't.
like, the idea
But it's
is
okay.
if you have the
Yeah, the
BT14
new
Agumon in
Agumon
play with a tie,
tie out.
you could just use Louis to force raise it out and basically make plays the opponent might not be expecting.
Well, you wouldn't be able to do it because it has to be at the start of your main phase. So you could force it out, but it won't. You won't be able to get the free Evo,
No, I mean, you're
unfortunately.
mostly trying to have just the 3 memory to be able to force it out and then just
Yeah,
Evo
do stuff.
anyway.
Yeah, have like a block. No, well, you can't actually. You won't be able to get a blocker. Interesting. I wonder. I guess it is just an extra attack. So if you're able to like get them close to death, and then you slam it, if you have 3 memory, slam the Louis, promote an egg.
Well,
That maybe.
the idea, in my perspective, would be more for like Agumon X antibody, just
Yeah,
because you
yeah.
could like,
Evolve, push it, evolve into Agu X, get another search, and draw.
yeah,
Okay.
and establish that secondary body, because we know the game of chicken is insanely important for the current trend of the game with how stacked stack-based decks like to fight against each other. It is just this
Interesting.
ginormous game of chicken on whoever loses their main stack first kind of just loses the game. And Louis kind of
Makes
helps
sense.
you have more responsiveness to that. Because sometimes you get like caught in these off racing cycles, is what I called it whenever I played green decks with Mimi. It's just like, oh, my eggs are on a really bad cycle. Louis kind of just helps fix that cycle.
Okay, I dig it. I just saw it and I was like, what the heck? I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, but
Doesn't it like fits and it doesn't fit at the same time?
yeah, but I do like the tech that they're running with the starter deck Greymon, mostly
Yeah,
just the
for
starter deck Metal Greymon, just because it is another instance of security attack. Plus, that's basically free. So between the starter deck 1 and starter deck 14, that's two extra security tech that you have basically zero effort put into. So it just makes War Greymon punch harder. That's all it really does, and I like
yeah, and
it.
a lot faster. I do like it. Yeah, it
Yeah.
makes sense.
So it'll be interesting to see how this type of a format continues to develop, even though I know it's going to be a short one. But it's going to be really important taking a look at this going into EX5. Even though EX5 changes actually quite a lot, it's just sometimes when an event happens right after a set release, it is a good idea just to go with something that you're familiar with rather than try something like try a brand new deck. So getting seasoned on decks that aren't changing in EX5 for Nationals, that's what we're going to be looking at when it comes to BT14 data more than the actual data itself that we're going to be playing in.
Hmm,
So,
interesting.
at least that's my perspective on it.
I mean, I agree for the most part. I think it makes sense. The logic, at least to me, makes sense.
Yeah. So, with all that meta mumbo jumbo out of the way, I guess we could probably get into the main conversation, which is talking about LGSs and trying to build a community. I've played multiple TCGs before Digimon, and I've had to build some of the communities myself. Um, like, I used to play Force of Will back in the day. Bless my heart for trying to play that game. It was a good game, just the company ruined it, but regardless, it was I walked into a half dying card game where the support really wasn't there, and I had to come up with ways to be able to create my community there. So that's kind of where I gained my experience on trying to create TCG communities out of nothing. And even though the game ultimately collapsed and the community fell apart, um, it I still had fun building and nurturing the players that I was able to get. So I started off mostly just by asking on Facebook, hey, who here kind of just plays the game in the state or in this area? Got a response, let's meet up. And then that's kind of how it started from there. But I think like you as a player continuing to play the game, that's already step number one. Step number two, unfortunately, does come from the LGSs themselves. If the LGS is not willing to support the game the way that you want or need it to be supported, then it's going to be very difficult to build or continue to build the community you're trying to form around the game you're playing.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the biggest disconnect at one of my LGSs where there's people there always for Digimon and stuff like that, but they just never want to support like the Digimon community. Um, and it definitely hurts them because then it's just like, well, we don't want to be here. We'll just go to this other store because this store actually wants us there, or at least they make us feel like they want us there. And then we're more inclined to go purchase from the other store because, like, why would we go and purchase from a store that doesn't care about us being there? Um, it just it does like it's all psychological at the end of the day. Um, but that matters, you know. Like at the end of the day, people want to feel like they were wanted, even though it's a TCG. It's a store. They're a business. They shouldn't really. Ideally, they shouldn't really care about what people think, but they have to because they're a business. and they want people to come back in there. So like at least when it comes to like TCGs and like LGSs, to me, the idea of fostering a community should be at the forefront. Um, when it comes to just wanting to build a group of people to play like a game or get them to keep coming back to back and back to play. Um, and that's not an easy task, but it also I don't think isn't the hardest task either.
No, it really isn't. Because, like, my current main LGS, my Digimon community there is incredibly small. I'm not going to say it's a very large group. There's like four of us total most of the time.
Wow,
And we're the
mine is
core
big.
four. And unfortunately, we don't really get a whole lot of events to fire, which is why I do a lot of my casual testing. Because in case somebody actually does come, heavens forbid, I'd like play Lugamon or Shine against them and just completely blast them away. But disregarding the fact that I use that as like my fun casual testing ground, like the store isn't really actively doing anything to help me grow the community. They're not advertising any Digimon events. They do sell product, but they don't sell singles. And like I was talking with a couple of other people on why they don't play here when they obviously could. And part of it, yes, is that convenience factor. It's not the most convenient. It seems like a lot of places, it's like, yeah, it's just 20, 30 minutes out. And if we have to pick and choose between which 20 to 30 minutes we're going to drive, obviously we're going to choose the one that's more beneficial to us, that this store actually does care about the game and the community at large. So even though, like, my store has like a Bandai Sunday, that's basically what they called it. They stopped advertising One Piece and they stopped advertising Digimon. They stopped advertising Lorcana, even though that's not a Bandai game. That was also being ran on Sunday because Sunday was just the off day that they didn't really have anything going on. So they just stuck all of those on Sunday. So maybe the day is wrong for people. Maybe the time is wrong for people. And like part of it, I do blame my LGS is they just don't want to support anything that's not in a good enough quantity. So Dragon Ball, because that was the first big Bandai card game that actually stuck, that's the only one that they actually support, and they don't even carry singles for that. They half-heartedly support it just because the community's already there and they don't have to do any extra work to be able to keep and maintain those players.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe I keep trying and I keep advertising, and I have been advertising like, hey, I play at the store. Come play with me. Like I think there's just too many different factors at play that make it very hard for me to be able to foster the community at that store. I have to probably see maybe there's competition that somebody else is doing something on Sunday, and maybe that's impacting why I can't get more players to come out. I don't know. There's like building a community is not an easy thing. I will say that. It will never be easy. And like you do have to put your own work into it just as much as the store does.
Yes, I think it does fall onto the players because if they're not fostering a decent community, then of course, why would like if I come there every week and it's just a bunch of toxic players, why would I want to come and support the community? But I think it does fall a bit heavier shoulders onto the LGS because they just at the end of the day they're the ones that have to supply the product and get people to actually want to be there. So if they're not doing at least the bare minimum, then it's very easy for a group of people to just be like, I'm good. I don't really want to be a part of this because you're not supporting us or me, or I don't feel supported in a way that would be conducive to both of us being beneficial. Because at the end of the day, it is a business. They are there to make money. So that makes sense, and that it lines up to me. It's not that I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, you guys just want to be selfish monsters that just make nothing but money. I understand that that's how it has to be because that's that's what they are. They're a business first, and then whatever else they support will be based on whatever it is they're making money off of.
I mean, granted, I will say in the LGS's defense for like a lot, this isn't just my LGS in particular, it's just a lot of LGSs in general that don't want to carry singles for every card game. Yes,
Of
they do
course.
have to think about their space. Yes, they do have to think about the communities and who they're playing with. And then yes, they also have to think what is the turnaround for these types of cards. Digimon in the past has not had the best of turnarounds. I can firmly say sets 1 through 5 were profitable. Sets in terms of like as a single seller. Sets 6 through 13 were not. RB1 was definitely not a profitable product in terms of like if I was a single seller being able to like sell my cards and be able to garner a profit. It really wasn't until like this most recent set that I honestly can say like Digimon is the secondary market is in a better spot for stores to want to open up product. Like we even see this with older sets and older cards spiking, not dramatically, but good enough to where it actually warrants attention on some of those singles, like Bloomlord and BT10. BT10 is actually a pretty decent set to just open up because some of the cards just aged very well. Because like you have Bloomlord, you have Metal Greymon for blue hybrids, the good one. Then you also have Venusmon in that set. Then for the casuals, like even though it's not like super tier 1 hyper meta deck anymore, it does have a lot of the core parts to Cross Hearts. So like as a store, opening up that set would get you singles for the players to have access to be able to start building Cross Hearts, and then you still have some good cards that you could just have in your case and actually sell and be able to make a profit out of.
That makes sense. I mean, I understand. There's always logistical costs with that kind of stuff.
Yes.
Like,
I'm not saying
um,
everyone should just jump in to start Digi Finance, but because that's not the smartest thing ever. But
no,
I think like right now, like we're in a really good spot for the secondary market to be able to support the LGS wanting to support the community with some singles.
yeah, I agree. I think the game is quite healthy in that regard. There isn't. I don't look at that secondary market and I'm like, wow, these cards are absolutely absurd for the most part. I think there's like a few outlier cards, but there's always outliers. So that statement is almost irrelevant. Um, so I dig it. I'm very happy with what the uh, the current market is, which makes me want to believe that LGSs will be more willing to hold singles because the market is so healthy um, in that regard. And there are those cards that are just ridiculously expensive for like no reason. Um, and it's interesting. I mean, it's a whole other thing, and I'm not a business major, so I don't know anything about that in regards to what would be good financially to do and things like that. It makes sense. I understand that they're not going to do whatever it is that can hurt their business.
I mean,
So,
even just accepting some of like the more highly sought after singles, like it does go a long way because I used to travel a lot to all of the different LGSs in the area for pre-releases because I am pretty good at pre-releases last I checked with my current winning streak. But back patting, like patting myself on the back aside, like I used to travel around a lot and I saw all of the different communities for those different stores. And I sat there and I was just wondering, why can't my store have that much success? Because some of these stores had really decent turnouts. And I'm just sitting there, and part of it, like we've been saying, does fall onto the store. Like, I'm always going to be there because in case anyone does want to come in, learn how to play Digimon, or just already have something in play, I want to be there for them. That is the most that I can physically do on my end as a player. But the store does need to put up a little bit more, hosting the events, advertising, carrying singles. Like there's a
I mean,
lot that goes on into like actually creating a scene for them to generate business off of, because we're there to spend money on these tournaments so we could get like it's a mutual give and take, and if they're not willing to give, we're not willing to take.
exactly. I mean, it makes sense. And I mean, for me, like, I've, I can't even begin to tell you, like, the amount of stuff that I hold. Like, when I come to like my locals, I bring so much product. I bring so much like a bunch of bulk commons, rares, and stuff in that. Like, solely for the sheer fact of people that are like newer and maybe they want to get into the game. I have product there or cards that I can just be like, here, give. Here's the starts of a deck or
That's
something of that nature.
yeah, that's
And I,
part of the
I
reason.
literally just give them up. I don't even pay. I don't ask them to pay or nothing. I just go there and I there's only so much we as players can do.
Yeah, I
Um,
did the same thing for a very long time. Like RB1 was so EX4 was the first case I didn't buy. I did buy a case of BT13, and then I didn't buy a case of RB1 for obvious reasons. That was just ugh. But regardless, I, like you, wanted to have enough supply to try to cover what my LGS couldn't in terms of being able to get people into the game at as low of a cost to them as possible, because for me it's costing me what, commons, uncommons, a couple of rares, maybe a
yeah,
super rare that I have like 12 of. Like it's not really that big of a deal, um as long as
I
I
mean
can
like
create a player to be able to play with and teach them and
yeah.
have them start to grow, which I got one person in that way, and I'm very thankful that I have him, even though he is a little bit infrequent due to health issues. But I can't control that, and neither could he. But
Yeah.
I wanted it to be there for the players, and that's the type of community that I've built at my store between the players that I do have. And it pains me when I went up and I asked the LGS owner if there's anything more that they're willing to do, and unfortunately the big man in the chair at the LGS really doesn't want to support any new TCGs. He sees them all as basically just a giant waste because they're not the big three. And like it kills me to see that type of mentality out of my LGS's owner. Like the rest of the store crew, completely different story. But like in terms of his perspective, he just doesn't feel like he wants to invest in anything but the big three because that's the safest option. And Magic is doing absolutely terrible right now, so is it even that safe of an option? We don't know.
Thing is, Magic will never go away. Like, it's just too massive. Like, it could do bad now, but then all it takes is one good or two good sets, and then they're like, wow, that bad stuff, we forgot about it. And then they just move on.
I mean, they've been
Like,
on a pretty steady downward trend for at least
yeah, over
a
the better
year or
part of a few
two
years.
years at this
I was
point.
about to say, yeah,
But
the
I
better
mean,
part of a few years.
yeah, but because the game is so big, it is harder for it to fail, and even when it's failing, to certain stores, it still does well, which is the crazy part. And it is harder for a lot of these newer TCGs to be able to prove themselves, especially prove themselves fast enough to warrant store owners like my LGS owner to want to even give them a chance. Like I can firmly say, if it wasn't for as large of a Dragon Ball community as my store has, they'd probably be dead in the water as well.
That makes sense. I mean, I can't even tell you the last time I saw a Dragon Ball player in my area.
I think like in my
Like,
entire area, it's all conglomerated into my LGS because nobody else is either A, doing it, or B, cares enough to do it.
yeah,
Which again goes to that same point where it's just like you as a player can only do so much, and it is up to the LGS if they ultimately want to try to actually support the game or not. And like
correct.
it does take a certain person to be able to step up and try to organize things themselves with the consent of the LGS. Like, I've tried it before. It's really difficult. Like, I've tried being their official judge, even though I'm not an official judge. I'm smart enough to probably be one. I just haven't passed the judge test. That's an entirely different story. But, like, I've offered to do so much stuff for the store to try to get Digimon up and going. And even on their website, they don't even have an event page listed for Digimon, just being like, yep, it's Sunday is Digimon Day. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And like, it pains me because I just want to play. And like, I don't know if I'm going to have to find another LGS to play at, which I think that's the ultimate me giving up, is going to a different community in order to try to, have more people to play with. And as a player, that's something I actually have to sit down and think about, because I keep trying my hardest to build a scene. And I know I'm not the only one in this, considering how many new player posts I see asking like where they can they play or how they can get others to play. Like, it does start with you to be able to have that small group, but you eventually have to like expand past that small group in order to actually have growth for the store to willingly want to try to support you. So it's a really tough balance between what you have to do and what the store has to do.
Yes. I don't. It's such a weird dynamic. It really is, because it's like there's always going to be people that want to do something, at least in regards to this. Let's just say lean it into this. There's always going to be people that want to play like XYZ game. Even like the smaller games and things like that, because there's always just that niche crowd everywhere. There's always a niche crowd. But it's so weird because the they don't want, at least the LGS, like the main, like the LGS owners and things like that. They sometimes, they'll go out of their way and they'll get the product. Like, one, my LGS owner is great. I think the one that we have now, he's absolutely amazing. Him and his wife are absolutely dolls. They're so great to be around. They just have very good energy, and they're willing to do things like go out of the way to get product for us and things of that nature. And that's really cool, because that's not something you see very often. Even like product for games that are like brand new, like the Lorcana stuff and things like that, and hard to get product, and they go out of their way for, like when everybody was having those problems with tournament packs and things like that, and Digimon, that this specific LGS never had that problem because they always fought. And that's something that you just have to really, really cherish when you do find that, because they're like now I go to others. I have 3 LGSs in my area, and 2 of them are awful. One of them is great, like fantastically great, and then one of them is just horrendous. The other 2 are just awful. They just don't care about anything else that isn't Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic. If it ain't Yu-Gi-Oh! Magic, you ain't playing at their store, essentially. And it's
Yeah.
like, that's lame. That's like really, really lame to just alienate entire communities for the sole purpose of money, which I understand to an extent. Yes, they have to make money. But, like, at some point, like, is it really just only about the money? Like, no one opens a card shop and it's just like, yeah, I can't wait to open this card shop and make millions of dollars. That's not at all what most people open up card shops for. At least more often, that is not their intention.
No, because I got on some really good terms with my current LGS, which is why I'm personally struggling with this so much, is because I like the atmosphere. I like what the store has been doing to improve itself as a store with all of the expansions that they have made. And I like the people, for the most part, that go there and play there. I have encountered people that I have not seen in years there, which to me was shocking enough. So like, I like the spot, and I have a good relationship with everyone. Like, this stemmed from me playing Buddy Fight. I knew nobody was going to play Buddy Fight. I knew that right off the bat. But I was playing online, and I needed product, so my LGS hooked me up with some Buddy Fight product, and like just me asking for that product, them going out of their way to get something that they usually don't. I mean, granted, they knew I was the one purchasing it, but still, the fact that they did that for me because I asked definitely felt really good, and why I trust this LGS. It's very hard for like me to continue actually playing there when they don't want to support the game as much as they support other games. And it's just very unfortunate, putting me in a really awkward position, because like I don't know if I should try asking harder, or like just I don't know. I mean, granted, like promos aside, because like promos is its own sticky situation,
Yeah.
because that's half of it is literally the distributor you go to. Like I know there was the whole demo deck debacle for the Imperial German demo deck, just because they had some good new promos, like the Imperial German
God,
Beast
that was
promo.
so lame.
Yeah, it's just certain stores get product based on the distributor they have, and this is the same for pretty much most areas, where Bandai sends the stuff to the distributor. So like my LGS was able to try to work with some of the distributors to make sure that they could get certain promotional products that other distributors wouldn't provide for them. Um, so it really does make it very hard on me as a player to decide what I want to do, because I want to grow that community and I really want to try. But I don't know. I don't know. It's not that I'm at my wit's end, because I do have my like little core four. That's what I call us. But I want more. Like I guess I'm greedy and I want more people.
I don't think that's unfair to ask for. Um, in my eyes, I don't think that's dramatically unfair to be like, hey, I've been playing this in this community forever now. I would like to, maybe try and get a little bit more out of this. Um, and it just makes sense. I mean, it's not like you're asking for something that's unreasonable.
It's just
Um,
I'm trying to think of like, cuz I'm a problem solver, like that's what to me designer means, is problem solver. So I'm trying to figure out how to problem solve like a way to attract more people, and I I'm just I'm just at my loss here on how to be able to try to get more people on my end, and what I can try to convince my LGS that they're willing to take the risk on their end. Because if they get burnt, then they're probably not. I mean, they'll still buy product because I buy product from them. I asked for it. But it really will decide how I continue on how much support I'll be able to get from them. And it
yeah,
scares me. Like, to be honest, as a player, it scares me.
it does suck being able not knowing with certainty that like there might be a point where they're like, you know what, no, we're not going to be able to get product for you. Sorry.
I mean, I'll know
That
I'll get product. It's just the people factor. It's just like
get people to
I'm trying
play
to
with
figure
them.
out how to attract people both on my end and what I can try to convince them to do to try to get people on their end. Because I think right now with BT14, this is probably one of the best times to get into Digimon. We just had a new demo deck, we had a reprint set. Even though the secondary market for BT14 is a little bit on the crazy side, but that's mostly because of the holidays. But I think BT14 as a whole is actually a solid product that probably will have some decent longevity. Um, and like now just seems like the perfect time to try to strike, to try to revitalize a community, and I don't know how to approach it.
Yeah, I mean it's hard. Like it's one of those like it's a very hard medium to really sit there and be like, yes, uh how do we make it so that we can get not even like the most amount of people, but just a group of people to come and really play. And that's not something that's that overly simple, to be 100% honest.
No,
Um,
it's not. Because, like, I would want to try to do it during the week, but I already know their event schedule and the room that they have left. And it's very hard during the week to get stuff, which is why, like, they just lumped all of the Bandai games into Bandai Sunday. Because that's, like, the day they generally have the least amount of business, which I guess just makes sense because Sunday's more of that religious or family day. And, like, it's just, it's so difficult.
yeah, it's one of those like I also we have funnily enough our locals on Sunday as well. Um, and it sucks. Like it really does just suck. Um, not being able to have people like one of my locals is on Sunday. The locals that is awful is on Sunday. Um, and then the the good ones are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And that's usually where I get the good chunks of people. And it's it's weird. It's very, very weird. I don't know quite why it's the case. I mean, I think the day matters. I'm not gonna front. Where they put it on the day matters quite a bit. Um, and I feel like Sunday is like one of the worst days ever that you could put it on. It just is such a weird because that's the day of most religious acts and things like that, and then there's that's kind of the last day of the week that you're like, this is my chill like. So a lot of people are preparing to go back into the work week, and nobody wants to go out, and I don't know. It's really weird to me. Um, why Sunday in particular is like the worst day, but it also somewhat makes sense in my head. The way I'm rationalizing, at least, it makes somewhat sense.
I mean, like Sunday, we get a pretty decent Yu-Gi-Oh and pretty decent Dragon Ball turnout. So it's like I know people could go on Sundays, and people do play on Sundays. It's just maybe it's just an area thing. Like there's so many different factors at play. But the whole takeaway is to kind of just try to wrap things up is like to not give up. Like, if this is something you want to try to pursue to create, not only just for yourself, but for others as well, like, it does take a lot of effort. It does take good communication. It does take a good store. And it's not all on your shoulders. You do need to have good communication with the store on just trying to figure out all of the different factors to be able to get it into a successful position to be able to grow the community you're trying to grow. And like, even though it can be harder on some people and then others based on the store, the area, the time, the day, like there's so many different factors at play. It's something you really have to work towards and you can't give up on if this is what you really want.
Yeah.
Because starting something is way easier, or is way harder than walking into something that's already established.
100%. Not even. It's immediately. It's so much easier. Uh, and I think that's just something that people just don't understand fully. So it also, I guess, falls on like it's hard to work the courage to be like, yes, let's all gather up and do this. Because most, well, I won't say most. I don't know the percentage of people, but I like to believe a lot of card game players are very, how do I say it? They're shy, or not the most socially adept all the time. We tend to fall in that crowd quite a bit. So I kind of understand not, taking the initiative. A lot of people not wanting to take the initiative.
I definitely can speak to that as the person who's sitting in the corner of nationals, just not really curled up in a ball, but just minding my own business, keeping to myself, waiting for a friend to come up. So yeah, like it's even if you are an outward person, sometimes it
It's
just
just
finding
hard.
it's just hard finding what to say and how to say it because that all matters.
It does quite a bit. Like it does very, very much.
And that's why I wish Bandai had better communication on their front. Like they like not to spin it back onto them, but like I think Bandai also needs to do a better job at trying to support local communities more than they have been. We've had some pretty bad tournament packs. I think right now we have some pretty okay ones. Two Tamer Party events back to back. Like it seems like they're trying a little bit harder than they were in the past, because like some of those store tournament packs were just god awful. They were just terrible. Why would anyone want to go out and play for those cards? Like, so I, it's not like that's the third factor on like Bandai supporting the game itself. I think like they also could do a better job. Not to bring this up like at literally the tail end, but Bandai has the least amount of work to do. They just have to make cards and be able to give them to stores to be able to promote the game for them, so that way the stores can start playing. But I think like right now it just seems like it's a really good time to try to strike while the iron's hot, while everything is like kind of going right. BT14 being a good set. All of these like demo decks, store participation, store tournament, like it feels like they're trying harder than they have in the past. And I think like with how bad not BT this year has been in general for the Digimon trading card game, because Bandai really dropped the ball this year, it felt like. This is kind of like one of the most important things that's been on my mind, is like they seem to be trying to do better at the end leading into the next year, and trying to hopefully set up next year to be a really big year. And I'm excited to see what they have. And I really hope that like this advice can help you be able to form your own community, get it started, get some ideas running between you talking to the LGS and what the LGS can do. Like that's all that I kind of just wanted, was like to highlight my struggles and highlight my successes on how to be able to build a community. And it is, like we kept saying, it is just really, really hard, but sometimes the hard work does end up paying off depending on the individual circumstance on what you're trying to do with who.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly.
So I think that is a good place to close things up, just because I felt like that was a pretty conclusive, discussion. So
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, make sure to share it with others on various social medias to be able to support us. Make sure to leave that like, rating, review, follow, subscribe, whatever, on whatever platform of your viewing or listening pleasure. And thank you again, and we'll see you next time.